And welcome, boys and girls. A lovely Thursday morning for, yes, another conference preview episode of the Three Man Week College Basketball Podcast. Matthew Cox, Jim Root, Ty McKeon are your esteemed hosts today. We are in the Power Conference arena, Mr. McKeon. The ACC, a league with too many teams. But yeah, let's get to it. I ask how you're doing. I don't care all that much. I want to talk basketball. I want to provide the longest runway for basketball talk for Boston College, Georgia Tech discussion. But Jim, how are you?
I'm great, Matt. Let's talk ACC basketball. Kai, how are you?
Good, Jim. 18 teams is way too many. Yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah, it is. Team by team breakdowns. Yes, 18 of them. It's funner when it's a league that I think is more passionate to our hearts. But there's some mush in this ACC conference we'll get to. But certainly a fun league last year that got all the glory in March with NC State and Clemson's run to the Elite Eight. But before we get there, first of all, Joe Pitti, aka Jay Pitti, aka Joe Paskoff, thank you for the work you do on the intro and outro, ones and twos. If you don't follow us already on Twitter or Instagram, you should do so. That's at 3MW_CBB. Please subscribe to our lovely podcast on Spotify, iTunes, Amazon, among other platforms, but most important of which is YouTube. If you're watching live now, hit the old like and subscribe button. If you're not, go back and do that at your earliest convenience, but preferably do it sooner rather than later. And then, of course, if you're not an adjoined member of our esteemed Discord channel in the Burner Ball with Trilly Donovan, you need to do so now. We are releasing our previews conference by conference, day by day. We've officially published how many now? 12?
Boy, I didn't do a count. Sounds
I was trying to off the top of my head.
14.
We're about halfway there. Halfway there. Getting close to the mid-majors, all-power conference hoop
Bon
fans.
Jovi? We're halfway there. We're living
I hate that song.
Hey.
Most overrated song in the history of music.
I think it was named number one 80s song or 90s song.
Well, the 80s was the worst decade of music of all time, so that makes sense. But yeah, please join us. We're every day we post a preview, chop it up in the Discord about it, and we will be doing that until the season tips off effectively. So please join. Check our Twitter. We have that pinned. You can also go to Trilly Donovan's. He has that pinned on his Twitter. There should be many avenues to find it. And yes, as Kai's alluding to, we will put that in the description of the podcast for extreme easy access for those of you who may be joining us for the first time today. And if you are, welcome. We hope you'll stick around for many episodes to come. No new reviews today. Personal corner, as I mentioned, I wasn't all that interested. I'm just more interested in the basketball corner of the ACC Nook. I think that's it, fellas.
Yeah,
that's right, Matthew.
Great job, Matt.
What should we do, Matt?
Oh, we should probably we should plug the Mark Titus AMA. That was awesome on Tuesday. Thank you for setting that up, Jim. We have Johnny Fanta next week as well. So again, another bonus edition. If you're a member of our Discord channel, please, if you have any issues signing up, just DM us or send us a note as well. So, Jimmy, let's round it up for Roots Roundup.
Let's do it, Matt. Let's talk news and notes in college hoops. But before we do, a quick shout out, paying the bills with CBB Analytics, something we have been using over and over in this preseason. I cite it constantly, the shot charts, the on-off data. Matthew, give the people a quick breakdown and tell them about the promo code.
Yes, that's Weave, WEAVE. Use it when you go to their site to sign up. Nick does an awesome job, has a bajillion advanced statistics about college basketball. As I mentioned last episode, I've been really getting into using some of the D2 and D3 player shooting charts, on-off stuff. It helps you really get a glean for what's coming in, especially in the mid-major world. Like you get to like the Sun Belt, the MAC, a lot of these schools are picking off some of the best D2, D3 players, which are sort of a blind spot to all of us. Another great tool for both fans and coaches alike. It allows you to get a head start, a leg up on your competition in terms of player scouting. I did read a quote from Richie Riley talking about how he is constantly scouring the D2 and AIA D3 landscape throughout the year. He has like a year-round portal tracker thing, and CBB Analytics is just a great tool to kind of accelerate that. So plenty of good use cases, fan or coach alike. Again, promo code WEAVE, WEAVE at sign off 40, not 20, 40 Kai, $40 off subscription. Sign up today. Coaches, DM us for the Holy Grail access of the pro tier. We'll get you that set up as well.
Oh, there you go. CBB Analytics. Okay, the news. A couple big ones out of the NCAA. First, they are eliminating the national letter of intent process. So if a player signs or commits to a school in the past, he would sign a national letter of intent that would lock him into that particular university. It's gone now. I feel like that's a type of legal battle that the NCAA loses in court, so they just did away with it. Kai, any thoughts on the impact of this on college hoops?
I have zero. Did it matter anyways? The national letter of intent? I feel like guys got out of it all the time.
Yeah, it was bad look to not let somebody out of their NLI.
Hmm.
So I think everybody just kind of did it as standard practice.
Yeah.
It didn't feel super enforced or enforceable. So yeah, it doesn't feel like a sweeping change. The other one that essentially feels like a nothing burger to me is the entry period for the transfer portal is now 30 days instead of 45. It starts or it opens the Monday following the second round of the NCAA tournament. So all but 16 teams are eliminated from that. The NIT is still going. Shout outs to, don't worry, we're not forgetting about your precious tournament. There are a few teams going in that as well, but most of the teams done with their season. And you have 30 days from that moment. Now, that is not a window for committing. You just have to be in the portal at the end of those 30 days. And then schools can still recruit and guys can still commit elsewhere. Pretty much all the way up until school starts the following semester. You just have to be enrolled. Matthew, one big thing they try to change with this is that once a guy has committed out of the portal, he cannot be contacted by anybody. But that just seems like another unenforceable pie in the sky rule that is going to be broken repeatedly through back channels, et cetera. Guys are already getting contacted before they're even in the portal. So I'm not putting a ton of stock in that.
No, I'm not. I like that we're at least trying to make the portal window timing make more sense, though. I think my biggest issue with it is the fact that there's so like Brad Underwood was very transparent at the second weekend. He's like, yeah, we're recruiting players. We have to right now, right? I think Nate Oates mentioned that too. It's like, yeah, we're still in the tournament, but we also have to recruit because if we don't, we're behind the 8 ball for next year. So I think the more we can push that to an equal playing field for everyone that's not like poaching during the postseason run, I think that's just a good thing.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind it if it was not open until after the NCAA tournament ended entirely. I
Yeah,
know
that
there's
would be
still going to
ideal.
be back channel conversations before that and guys getting poached, et cetera. But I also don't mind the idea of making guys sit on it, think on it for a while. If you can enter right after your season ends, then a lot of guys are probably going to rush into it. But if you have a, sit down with your coach and actually have a heart to heart and talk about what your status is with the program, your role going forward, perhaps we get less guys just leaping in there, cannonballing into the deep end and trying to find out what they're worth, et cetera. But that is neither here nor there. I am not the policymaker. That's just an idea. They do not listen to me, and that makes sense. I'm not an overseer of the sport. In recruiting news, no one overly exciting. Not a single top 70 recruit committed this week in the class of 2024. So a shout out to Northwestern, West Virginia, Georgia, Washington, and Texas A&M, all bringing in recruits. Sorry, I'm not going to go through the individual names because there are 18 teams in the ACC, and we're going to be going long on this pod anyways. So big shout out to them. Other random news and notes. The 2026 Maui field came out, and it consists of Arizona, Maryland, Notre Dame, Providence, Ole Miss, BYU, VCU, and a mystery eighth team. I believe this will be an off year, no Chaminade, since they're only in odd years. Kai, I think this is a pretty good field. I saw some flack for it. This feels like everybody saying SNL was good back in my day. It sucks now.
Yeah, I
don't
get
know.
I get the complaints though. You got like Maryland, Notre Dame right now is not an exciting team. We love Notre Dame. We love Shrewsbury, but I get it. They're not exciting. Providence is not exciting. Ole Miss is not exciting. These are like kind of like gritty teams. BYU, who knows? VCU, another gritty team. It's not like flash and pizzazz, it feels like. So I think that's maybe what's driving it a little bit. They're not household names.
Man, I don't know. Arizona, Maryland, to the top like 15 programs in sport,
No
won
one wants to
national
watch
titles in the
Maryland.
past 20 years. I guess
Eh.
you're throwing shade at, I guess, the
What's your
current
issue with the
brand
turtle,
of the
Kai?
basketball.
The
Well,
brand of
fear
basketball
the
is definitely
turtle.
not exciting to watch right now.
I don't care about. I like Notre Dame's going to have so much hype next year with all the recruiting mojo that Shrewsbury has this summer. I think Notre Dame will be we're all geeked about that team in there. Providence, the
Yeah, by
most
26,
passionate fan
we'll
base
see. Yeah.
that exists. Ole Miss will have $1 bajillion to spend. They'll have a good team probably. BYU's pumping out coin. They
BYU
could
is
be
like the
good.
highest NIL in the country.
Yeah, it's insane. So I'm in on this field. I guess you're right, Kai. Maybe it's not like 100 to 95 scoring output games. But hey, with the Maui rims, that can make any bad offense look good for a night. So that could be the remedy.
Hey, we'll watch it. But if I'm going to Maui for the first time, I'm not choosing this tournament to go to.
Ooh, I think you should go to any of them. At least it's not as bad as the Maui Vegas field when I think all 7 non-Chaminade teams were in the bottom 30 of tempo.
It's not
It's like
great.
St. Mary's, Wisconsin, Houston, Oregon. It was like the slowest tournament ever played. I don't feel like they have quite that problem with this group. And you still got Chris Beard and yeah, rising star name in Shrewsbury. I think it's gonna be awesome. Now, the one other MTE news bit that I wanted to bring up, guys, is the Charleston Classic is going down to 4 teams. And I believe 2025, 26, which Rothstein also added to his tweet. This could be an indicator of future MTE type stuff. This is the threat of all the NIL jamborees and whatever that's going on in Vegas that still have a lot of questions on their longevity, but I don't like this. I love the 8-team tournaments. You get the 12 games over 3 days. You see a lot of different matchups. I'm out on these going down to 4 teams. That's bad news for the sport. I don't like that. Right now we have media days going hot and heavy. Shout out to the Field of 68. They have been on a world tour.
Yeah, nice shot,
really
boys.
a national tour at all different kinds of media days there. I will give them a thumbs up for that. And we're about to get scrimmage results. Some exhibition streams coming up. Michigan State plays in 3 days as we record this on the 13th. A road game at Northern Michigan, Matthew. The hostile environment of Northern Michigan. Can the young Spartans handle that crowd? We'll find out.
Oh, the Upershim will be Banty. They will be Banty in the mitten.
Yep. Excited for overreactions and news from those. You know, one random guy will go 8 for 9 from 3 and we'll decide he's the best player on the team, and that won't be sustainable all season. But that's the fun of preseason, the limited news that comes out. It's real games. That's what we're excited for. But Matthias, we are also pumped to talk ACC. So I will hand the mic back to you as we get into the breakdown of the new and improved improved coast to coast ACC.
Yeah, from 15 to 18, the monsters get bigger and bigger, Kai and Jim. The 3 new members, a quick welcome to Stanford, Cal, and SMU. Yeah, SMU is sort of the black sheep in terms of the geographical location. Obviously, we've seen some of the ACC impact in football with Cal and Stanford. Go Tree. So yeah, some crazy cross country travel. We'll see how that all shakes out, obviously, but a lot to get to. Quick recap of last year. ACC was sort of a punchline, right? We all made fun of it. Not any good. And then they got 5 teams in the tournament, one of which was Virginia, and that was that's what pissed everybody off because they embarrassed themselves pretty emphatically. But NC State and Clemson sort of redeemed the conference at large. Duke snuck through to Elite 8 on the heels of a Jamel Shed injury, and then UNC got to the Sweet 16. So, you know, I think it was overall a fine year for the league. It still felt down to me. We'll see what that platform sets up into this year. Kai, what general thoughts on the league in terms of its momentum coming out of last season into this year from what you glanced at the rosters?
Yeah, well, definitely. First, I love your Stanford accent. That just kills me every single time you say that. There's no way that's the Stanford accent.
It's not. It's I think that's like a Stanford Steve or something.
It's more like Stanford, Connecticut or something like that.
Stanford.
The ACC, I'm just looking back at KenPom, where it's ranked among conferences the last 5 years. 4th in 2020, then 5th, 5th, 7th, 5th. It's just been down. Like the overall league, it's the breadth of it, you could say, the depth of it. The tops of the league has been pretty solid, but it's just been kind of meh in the middle and towards the bottom. These Final Four runs, Jim, these crazy Final Four runs we seem to get every single year from a team in this league have sort of saved the perception and kind of made people argue that they should be getting more teams, more respect. But analytically, it's just been down. Adding 3 teams that are probably not tournament teams this season, only probably makes it a little bit more watered down. However, I do think the existing middle has gotten better this season, at least.
I concur.
Yeah, the remnants or the guys the squads that weren't as solid last year or had Matt, you said mush earlier. The mush is a little firmer this year for the ACC. There's going to be some pushback from those middle teams. And I think part of why they've struggled to get bids is that the mush hasn't been good enough to beat the top teams to get the big time wins in league play. And this has really been a non-conference problem for them. Early in the year, these teams haven't been as strong performing in the Q1, Q2 games that you need to collect victories on. And you could argue that, they haven't set themselves up as well analytically with big time blowouts of non-conference Q4 type competition. I think everybody's pretty aware of what makes a conference go at this point. So the ACC, balls in their court to step it up, get more bids, and back up the one or two random outlier postseason performances that they've been getting over the last couple of years.
Yeah, Terrence Oglesby, the official ACC flag bearer, mentioned that yesterday. That was sort of his. He alluded to that as being, the non-conference is where this league has to get better if it wants to bolster its tournament positioning. But T.O. kind of countered with there's many teams in this league that just got a lot better as the year went on. And I say I agree with that, but that's sort of part of the problem, right? So there's an inherent risk to, overly engaging in portal combat, Kai, shouts to John Rothstein, may not be smooth sailing the first month of the year. So you dig yourself that hole. That's great that NC State was playing great late. But wouldn't have felt bad if they were left out. Same with Virginia. And that's just kind of part of the game. So let's talk teams, shall we?
Yeah, go through your standings. Tell us what you got. You wrote the preview. Congratulations.
Thank you. It was never ending. Honestly, these big mega conferences are just they become, by team 15, I just don't have any enthusiasm to write them because you just feel like these are, probably not at large teams. And it's just, you want to change, right? You want to pivot to a new league. I have 4 tiers in my 2025 standings. It's probably 3. If you look at Duke, North Carolina, and Wake Forest, that was sort of who I put on tier 1 and tier 2. You could argue that's tier 1A, tier 1B. I think I'm always overly glass half full on Duke, but man, that roster is certainly on a different tier of its own in terms of what it looks like on paper. UNC, RJ Davis is back. He's really good. But a lot of question marks around him up front. Wake Forest, I think kind of the darling a lot of people's in a lot of people's eyes in this league. Are they going to be trending closer to that upper half or that top 2, or do they bleed back into the, as Jim called it, the firmer mush this season? And then tier 3, I'll just rapid fire 3 because we're going to debate this pretty extensively here. I went Virginia, Louisville, Pitt, Miami, SMU, Clemson, Syracuse, Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, Cal, NC State, Virginia Tech. Whew, exhale. And then tier 4, Stanford, Florida State, Boston College. Florida State just bad, Boston College just Boston College, Stanford reloading. I just feel like they are the least likely to make an NCAA tournament push. That's where I drew this line. Tier 4 are teams that are these teams are not going to be in the tournament. Tier 3, most of those teams, half those teams probably won't be, but I think any one of them has a chance and the best possible outcome to get there. Even Virginia Tech, who's kind of at this point.
Yeah, I don't have any huge issue with your standings. We'll debate them obviously as we go team by team. I might have cracked up tier 3 into a couple tiers there, but overall, Matt, yeah, it's hard to rank an 18-team league for sure.
Yeah, Matt, I will give my thoughts as we go through.
Let's go Duke. The Blue Devils. I think let's start with John Shire. I think he's sort of the forefront of this Duke prognostication. Jeff Goodman has he gave John Shire a B+, Kai, in his current career to date coaching effort at Duke. I thought it was actually a pretty fair grade.
Listen.
Guys.
That was my Goodman.
I think I agree with that assessment, though. I think he's had unreal rosters, and his results have been okay. Now, jumpers against Anthony Davis, Jim. I know what I saw. Caleb Foster stuck around while Jared McCain left. Foster's sort of the guy who's going to come in his shadow. Sion James, Malik Brown, 2 older defensive, grizzled veteran type pieces that give you that old and new blend. And then freshman Con Canupul, who's getting all of the hype as the breakout freshman star of this team. Kai, what are the holes in this roster? Because there aren't many on paper. Even experience, I think, is pretty strong when you factor in the Gillis, Sion James, and Brown additions, along with Proctor back for his 3rd year.
Yeah, I have them above the league too, Matt. You said you might go tier A, tier 1A, tier 1B. I don't think so. I think Duke's on the tier by themselves. And unfortunately, we've said this every single year with Duke, and
I know.
I'll be let down once again. It's ridiculous talent. It's deep as heck. You named all the players. There's star power. There's experience. They check literally every single box. I don't know what you really nitpick here. Maybe it's shooting. I don't even know if you can nitpick shooting that much because he has some of that too on this roster. Shire, you mentioned Goodman gave him B+. Does he get a bad rap? In my eyes, he's underperformed a bit in the regular season, but you look analytically, he's gone 15 preseason in KenPom to 18. He's gone 9 in the preseason to 7 in his 2 years. He's kind
Yep.
of been where at least computers think he should be on an annual basis, at least the last 2 years. So maybe it's more perception. I haven't loved his press conferences after games, kind of like admitting he doesn't really, like he made mistakes, doesn't really know what he's doing in certain situations, but the product has been there. He has all the talent in the world, Jim. It's kind of hard to measure a coach when you have that.
Yeah, this team is super talented and super deep, and they've got mobility. I am begging him from the bottom of my heart, do not play a crawling molasses pace. This team is built to play fast. Like Malik Brown can be an up and down type forward. Malawak even has like mobility for a 5-star center. They've got a ton of guards, ton of wings. This team should get up and down. I want to see them play a little deeper into the rotation, let Flag show out in transition. That's my big request for Shire. I do agree. Maybe there is some, we've put too high of expectations on him. Perhaps that's on us. Matt, the Knipple thing is interesting. It feels so much like Tyrese Proctor is better than Kyle Filipowski 2 years ago. Like John Givoni shows up to one practice, tweets out that Proctor is the best player in the gym by far, and everybody goes nuts over how good Proctor is. And immediately it's clear as the season starts that Flip is their best freshman. I don't think, Knipple's going to be better than Flag. No way. I don't think anyone's saying that. But I'm pumping the brakes on that a little bit. I think he's going to be solid, not some super duper genius Jimmy Neutron superstar. That's still Flag. I think he'll be extremely useful. He can shoot. He's skilled. They need some of that. But I'm just tempering that relative to what kind of the fever pitch is on his hype as we enter the preseason. They're still number one for me in the ACC on a tier by themselves. I'm with you guys, especially Kai. I have it a clear separation from 2 and 3. And I think they'll win the ACC regular season. I think Shire's more prone and want to do that than Krzyzewski was, and these teams are a little older than some of those later Krzyzewski teams were.
Matt, is it a Reed Shepherd hangover? People see Knipple and they're like, "Oh, this is just like Reed Shepherd, where he wasn't the heralded guy. He's the white guy that can shoot. He's the best player. It's Knipple."
I just think there's so much other talent where I don't feel like Knipple's like this team's actual best player, but I am a believer in the hype all the way. And I appreciate both of you having cooler heads and more rational, cautious outlooks on him. But I'm kind of sold hook, line, and sinker with him being awesome. Just a quick note here. Proctor, Foster, Malik Brown, Syracuse transferred defensive stalwart, also can shoot it. Mason Gillis, Sion James from Tulane. Those 5 players averaged to shoot 39.5% from 3 last year. Knuppel can shoot it. Flag, we know can shoot it. So, yeah, I think shooting is a check. Jim, you mentioned transition. Shire mentioned multiple times as he headed off summer, they're going to try and push, check, and just their sheer size and length at the rim.
I'm sure that John Shire said that last year, too. I'm sure he did.
He's really been, I think he learned last year. I think I think after you hear people just banging in your head for a full year, I think you're more likely to make the adaptation, especially with just sort of the uncertainty of what the half court offense will look like. I think he actually gets that. Why do we need to tinker with stuff in the half court? We could just get up and run and throw alley oops and throw stuff to the rim to Locke and Cooper all day. So keep it simple, John. You have the best roster. Let the roster run. Next, UNC. On Tobacco Road we stay. RJ Davis comes back, first team all, my player of the year, by the way. Elliot Cadeau, his sort of Robin at point guard, which is a polarizing projection for him coming into his sophomore year. Jim, question marks are up front. Seth Trimble's back. You got Kate Tyson, sharpshooting wing. Ian Jackson, 5-star freshman. Lots of guard and wing talent. The question was, who's going to play? Who's going to bang with the big boys up front in the wake of Baycott's absence? Then Alan Lubin from Vanderbilt. Jalen Washington returning. Yeah? Thoughts?
That's not an overly exciting tandem to me, especially coming away from Baycott and how important and reliant they were on Baycott last year. They were 19th in rim frequency allowed and 18th in rim field goal percentage allowed. So you didn't get to the rim and you couldn't score if you got there. It was all about the drop coverage they were playing with Baycott, let him sit back, try to tempt you into mid-range pull-ups. That's why their turnover rate was so low. I think they can still run that, but it's not going to be quite as effective. He might have not have been like the most vertical shot blocker, but he was a wall at the paint. Like you couldn't go through him, you couldn't go over him. He was huge. I'm shaky on whether that's going to work this year. They also played through Bacot a lot in the post last year, top 60 in post up rate. Don't have that threat this year. It's going to have to be a way more perimeter
or Ingram too. Ingram was part of that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Great mismatch attacker. I actually wrote down Ingram in my notes, Matt. I just didn't say it. Thank you for correcting me there. I needed it. Got a little backup action there. But yeah, but you can have a lethal spread perimeter here with Cadeau handling the ball, Davis getting in the mix every once in a while. Kate Tyson's arguably the best shooter in the country. I mean, it's ridiculous what he can do. And Kai, I love Drake Powell. He's the one getting maybe even almost more hype than Ian Jackson right now. An insane athlete. He strikes me as a little Michael Kidd-Gilchrist-esque, like just super disruptive, fly around. Pro scouts are going to love him. Not a great offensive player yet, but man, there's just a ton of pieces here, especially on the perimeter. As long as the paint can hold up, which I'm not positive on, then this team's going to be top 15 good again.
Yeah, RJ Davis, I mean, front runner for player of the year in the country, I think, right now, or at least the top 3 candidate for it. So I don't think they'll be bad. Hubert is my consistent question, and UNC fans were, they're like, hey, he did pretty good last year, didn't he? Told you so. He did. He really snip-snapped. He's been snip-snapping back and forth, man. It's really hard to gauge. Has he learned his lesson coaching-wise? Was last year's team just super talented without Caleb Love in the mix? This year will be a test. It'll be, I mean, you have Davis and Cadu with a sophomore lead. Their backcourt's set. It's awesome. And the freshman studs rock too. I have questions on the front court as well. I'm not as concerned overall with teams with front court questions versus backcourt questions. There are a lot more unknowns on this roster than last year. Feels like last year it was kind of set. We knew it was going to happen from UNC. More defined roles. This one, definitely talented, but more, I would say, question marks and experience, especially the D1 level. So I can see UNC slipping a little bit. I still don't have a ton of faith in Hubert as a coach, but again, maybe I'm just a hater, Matt. Maybe I'm holding on to something that I shouldn't be from a couple years ago.
Yeah, I think my Hubert Davis take is fine. I'm not like discounting this team a ton because he's the coach. I think I'm discounting this team more because of how underratedly awesome this team was defensively. Guys like Cormac Ryan, Ingram last year, like just this is a really good defensive team. Jim mentioned the scheme. I think the returners up front are actually not as awful as people are making them out to be. Like I think Lubin and Washington are not going to be dreadful. I think they actually have some defensive upside, but there's just no way this team is as good defensively as they were last season, which I think puts an added burden on RJ Davis, scorching the nets. And I think this will be one of the most prolific shooting teams. You're right. Jim mentioned Kate Tyson. I put RJ Davis's shooting shot chart in my preview. And this team will absolutely torch teams when they get hot. The Duke UNC battle will be fun. I think you can argue UNC has the better backcourt. Duke has the better front court. What gives? I think Duke is the overall better team, but I think it'll be a fascinating matchup when those two teams square off both times this year. Final thoughts? Let's go to Wake. I think Wake versus UNC is a fun debate. I think some people are sort of so high on Wake, including myself, Jim, that I almost put Wake above UNC. Coming off the year that the Deeks had last season, were they a tournament team on paper? Yeah, but they just weren't consistent enough. They weren't good enough away from home. And ultimately, they fell just short. But when you return Hunter Salas, who I think has just all the obvious breakout All-American indicators that you could ever ask for, you bring back Efton Reed, who joined your team halfway through the year last year, just took you to a different level up front with some physicality. You added Trayvon Spillers, App State, interior defensive just stud. I mean, this team just feels more rugged, more physical, right? Last year, this team was exceedingly skill-based. This year, I think this team has more balance and more depth, Jim. Cosby, Billy off the bench from Iowa State, Juke Harris, the freshman I love, top 100 kid. I just think this makeup of this team has very few of any holes.
Yeah, they were 351st in bench minutes last year, and that was with Efton Reed kind of dancing in foul trouble a decent amount, and then trying to walk the tightrope of keeping him in the game or having to go Andrew Carr at the 5. I think they've got a lot more optionality this year. Spillers is hyperactive on the glass. He's a bouncy boy. Billy, like you said, has the high upside off the bench. Friedrichsen is a terrific shooter entering his sophomore year. I think he's going to light it up. And yeah, you got this like playmaking balance where last year Boopy, who we actually really liked, maybe took the ball a little too much out of Salas's hands. Can Tyler Johnson play off the ball next to him? That's a big question. But man, all we've seen is a guard transfers to Steve Forbes and improves by leaps and
Yep.
bounds year after year after year. The evidence is so strong that I strongly believe it this year. And I even kind of liked Johnson on Louisville, and that's tough for me to say something nice about Kenny Payne's squad last year. So Kai, I'm pretty in on Wake Forest. I think they're going to be top 20 team. I'm throwing out the road struggles that they had last year, and they were severe. But I think they're going to be really, really good this time around. Fool me once, fool me twice, fool me again. I'm back in.
Yep, I love this team. This is the year Forbes breaks through. Johnson, yes, is the next transfer star. He had smart gets in the portal. Matt mentioned Spillers and Blue. Smart gets. You needed depth. You needed physicality. Congratulations, you got it. Forbes is a smart coach. I mean, this guy rocks. I hope he makes tournament. Hope he gets top 4 seed. The guys, we didn't even mention Hildreth. I think Hildreth is a really underrated player. I mean, he does a lot of stuff for this team. He can defend a little bit. He can handle the ball when they need him to. He can shoot. He can take it to the basket. He's very unsung when you talk about
Float
Salas.
game.
What's
Float
that?
game.
Yeah, float.
He's got the float game.
Yep.
And he's tough as hell. I mean, he is like,
Yeah.
goes balls to the wall, hustles. I like him a lot too. So yeah, it's a great base start from with him, Salas and Reed. It's a great additions. I think it's a top 3 team in the ACC. Could definitely push for second in this league. I just don't think people are catching Duke, Matt, but I do love this Wake Forest team.
Trivia. Where's Hildreth from?
Is he UK?
There you go, Kai.
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
British. Yeah.
British guy.
Tough
Yeah.
as nails, British. He's not flopping like those
He's a
soccer
hooligan.
players over there.
Yeah.
Foot fairies. Kai, what would you say to the Wake Forest or the UNC fan who would say, "Oh, you love Steve Forbes so much and hate Hubert Davis, but why can't Steve Forbes win close games consistently and get over the hump while Hubert Davis has done nothing but win big games in big moment?"
Right, luck. Steve Forbes is clearly
Nice.
a better coach
Good.
than Hubert Davis. I'm sorry.
I think I
Talent,
agree.
Look at the talent. It's
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think, but I can understand a UNC fan being like, okay, you're just holding on to priors from 3 years ago. Like Davis has been more successful the last 3 years than Forbes.
He said way more talent at UNC instead of Wake
Yep.
Forest and East.
Yeah,
Tennessee
exactly.
State.
I think the program context there is king. Yep.
Yeah, he's had Armando Bacot every year he's been there. Hubert has, so that is super helpful. I'd like to see Hubert lead a team led by Tyree Appleby, where he's the best player. I'd be very intrigued to see how that went.
All right. Any more Wake thoughts? I'd love a few more because Virginia's up next. And people are going to probably turn off the podcast, but let's go to Virginia. Tony Bennett. I think this is such an obvious, if not bounce back year, at least it's a reset type of year in a good way, not like a rebuild, but a reset type of year where I think despite the fact they actually made the tournament last year, people did forget that they weren't as bad as they were to watch on television. But kind of this team lost Ryan Dunn and Reese Beekman, who were like 2 of maybe the best 10 defenders in college basketball, debatably. Maybe that's too high, top 20, like 2 demon defenders. And this is kind of Bennett's first real year doing the portal at scale, right? You're going to have potentially 4 guys starting that are portal newcomers. Day-Day Ames from Kansas State, Jalen Worley from Florida State, TJ Power, the bench cast away from Duke, and then Elijah Saunders, veteran kind of glue guy from San Diego State. They keep Isaac McNeely. They keep Blake Buchanan, Tame Murray, Andrew Rohde. Some freshmen are enticing off the bench. What's your general vibe meter on the Who's this season?
I've put them down a little bit since our top 50 voting. I got them 6th right now in the ACC, just from standings perspective. However, it's really hard to pick them below like top 5 in the ACC. They almost never finish there. I think Bennett's done it once, and that was like towards the beginning of his coaching career. He's always near the top of this conference. His style kind of begets it. He's always good on defense. He's a great coach. He does more with less talent. But the KenPom ranks lately, Jim, have been concerning. We've kind of talked about this. I mean, last 3 years, 68, 34, 72. Years before that, 1942. It's not like, it feels like he might be at a new level, and I don't want to, insult the man too much.
I agree. Just say it. This is what Virginia is. This is what Virginia is. I agree.
He just can't compete in the talent market, in the transfer portal market at Virginia versus schools like Duke and UNC. I like what he did in the portal this year. He took upside swings on power, on Ames. I think McNeely's really good. I think Rohde bounces back. He got a lot of flack last year. I don't think he's that bad of a player. I think he bounces back. Buchanan, enticing. And then Saunders and Morley, really solid gets from the portal. So I think this team is still really good, Jim. They might lack a little bit of upside, but I think they're going to be rock solid in the conversation for the tournament and top 5 finish in the ACC.
Yeah, lacking upside's kind of scary-ish downside if the like transfer incoming talent doesn't really come together. But I have faith it's going to work. The defense won't be as good as it was without Dunn, without Beekman. As Matt mentioned, those two guys were mega elite on that end. I still think Worley Buchanan is a nice bookend. We've got a big, rangy point guard that can switch. I liked Buchanan to the eye test last year. The second year in the Bennett system should help him. Should also help Rhodey, who clearly lost all confidence last year. It just became
Yeah, that was a confidence thing
melting
for sure.
puddle sitting on the court. Every time he touched the ball, it was like, I don't want to shoot, and shaky, put it up there and throw up a brick. But I also like the TJ Power ad quite a bit. It feels Providence getting Bryce Hopkins to me, buried at Blue Blood, doesn't do anything his freshman year, transfers to sophomore year school where he'll have a big role, and suddenly he's a star. And I think there's a chance Power elevates to that level in a much bigger role with more confidence. Of course, it's only his first year in the program, so maybe it takes a little bit more time. But there's enough here, Matt, to kind of assemble it and make it look good enough, which I think is what Bennett will do. They'll probably finish like 50th in KenPom, but third or fourth in the ACC. Just kind of a ho-hum, exactly what he's been doing lately. And we can still argue about whether he's good in elevating his talent or not. And I still think he's good enough.
Yeah, I think he's really good. I just think we got fooled into, you have an awesome coach. You ran into a generational run of players from 2014 to 2019, I guess. And like, okay, that's the ceiling of this program. When Bennett has pro level talent, he's elite. And when he just has good talent, he is still awesome and keeping Virginia at a level of consistency that the program has never really seen before. So just kind of a, quick reset of context of what I think expectations should be for this team long term.
Should we quick mention the reports that they're going to play faster and shoot more threes?
I was going to. I had it on my notepad. I have to.
Out.
Jim, I read it 3 different times, and I'm like, I laughed every time. I go, it's the Will Ferrell. I don't believe you. Yeah.
Yep.
But I do think I've seen enough times where I'm sort of like, okay, maybe after how much crap this team took last season, I can see the incentive to actually do something a little bit more modern this year. Loosen up.
My guess is they try it for like 3 games, and then Bennett is like, I don't like this. There's too much out of my control. And then he goes back to micromanaging. They tighten up, and that is my guess. It feels like Cronin when he would always say, we're going to run at Cincinnati. I'm not buying it for a full season.
Yeah, I mean, final point on Virginia here. To Kai's point, even when Virginia's been quote unquote bad, I mean, 2 years ago, they were 72nd in KenPom, 12-8 in the ACC. Like the floor is 12-8 in the ACC. You feel pretty good about picking them top 6, especially with, I think, the upside this transfer class has. Let's go number 5, where I have Louisville. And I think I was sort of presumed to be crazy for having Louisville so high a few months ago. I think more and more people are coming around to Louisville. It helps that they played in the Bahamas, helps that their fan base is as ubiquitous as any. And so the hype machine, Kai, has been rolling along all summer. It's Pat Kelsey. He is part of that promotion muscle, but I think the hype is, to me, somewhat real. I think the debate comes down to, do you think this roster, which is comprised of entirely transfers, is it mid-ish major, or is it more true high major with actual upside? I think that's where the debate comes down to.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of doubles and no home runs. That's how I kind of view this roster from an ACC top 25 standpoint. I have them 7th in the ACC. We're splitting hairs. They're really close to every other team around them. It's arguably the biggest coaching upgrade in the country over Kenny Payne. I mean, that's not hard to do. Yeah, you mentioned it's all transfers. It's going to take a little bit of time. There's no stars in this class. We don't really know who the alpha is. Is it Terrence Edwards? Is it Charlie Hepburn? Is it Keyshawn Pryor? It's kind of a mystery box, and I think that's going to take a little bit of time to sort itself out. By ACC play, could it? Absolutely. And they certainly have plenty of depth. I mean, they have 10 guys at least that can play on the floor. They're going to run a lot of guys in and out because of the style that Kelsey plays. But again, Jim, I think it's a bunch of doubles, and I think there's enough cap maybe on the ceiling that how far this team can go to where I have them sort of closer to the middle of the ACC than closer to the top like Matt does.
Yeah, I think the dream outcome for them is last year BYU, where there is no real star, but it all works. Yep. And the comparison there for me is I wish this team had Ali Khalifa this year, who is going to redshirt and would kind of unlock and maximize all the other talents on the roster because he's such an elite passer. And this squad doesn't quite have that. They've got guys that'll share the ball, but I don't think they can play that unconventional 5-out with Khalifa being the trigger man. That's not really where Pryor excels. But you can execute Kelsey's vision of get up and down, play super fast, shoot a ton of threes. They're going to shoot a ton and blow out worse teams. Just kind of raise the floor of the expectations. And Matt, it's like you're saying about the hype. When you're like leaving the dregs and the darkness of Kenny Payne, everyone's just going to be trumpeting this team.
Right.
And again, they blew out those teams in the Bahamas that were weird and had 38-year-olds and 14-year-olds, whatever. It was a ridiculous competition. But yeah, they're going to be better. I think they'll be in the tournament mix. I'm not going to call them a lock to go dancing, but I think they're at least in that conversation, and that is a far cry from where they were.
Yeah, my final concern, I guess, take on Louisville here is the conventional concerns you'd have with this team, which is, I think, the continuity, maybe point guard-ish, and to Kai's point, no real superstar. I think Kelsey's general style and DNA is sort of eradicates all three of those. I think you look at his Charleston teams. I know Charleston, different operation here, but his first 2 years at Charleston shattered expectations, had more continuity the second year, but the first year he had really not much continuity at all. And I just think he I don't know. He's really good about teaching his system pretty quickly to a whole new cast of characters. I think he kind of proved that. Now this is again different level, higher bar to clear. But I think the balance and the sort of team of faceless men type of vibe that this team's going to come at you with, I think will work in their favor. So I'm in on Louisville all the way. I actually could have them higher than Virginia. I probably should if I can revise my rankings.
Defense will be a problem. His only good defense at Charleston was 3-point shooting luck. Basically.
Yeah, that's.
And I think, and this roster is not built to be good defensively.
I kind of think it's a good defensive roster. That's where I disagree. I think the personnel's better than it looks. Than I guess the.
I think this
Kelsey's
could be a layup line.
I don't mind.
Yeah, the interior rim protection is a concern. What?
I think Hepburn's a fine point guard, senior point guard. Wisconsin 3 years. Started.
I'm not a huge. That's funny you mentioned. I'm not a huge Hepburn guy. I just think there's going to be some. There won't be a consistent, clear-cut point guard, so to speak. I think there'll be like him and Corin Johnson and Rain Smith will kind of play a little bit of point to some degree. But all these dudes can pass. Like it's all of Kelsey's teams are like everyone wings, forwards can all pass. I think that generally applies here. Prior, yeah, to Jim's point, I wish Ali Khalifa was playing this season. I wish my guy Kobe Rogers was playing this season. I love Rogers at Charleston. I think he's an excellent player. I don't know why he's redshirt.
Why would they redshirt? I don't understand.
I think he's an asset.
Khalifa's an injury thing. Yeah, the Rogers thing, I don't know. Our Kelsey team has never ranked top 100 in assist rate. It's not a great ball movement system.
Interesting.
Including Winthrop. So, yeah.
I mean, I think it is a pretty good system offensively, but I guess you're right. Maybe the passing isn't as
leads to assists.
Yeah,
maybe it's more matchup.
There's a lot more
matchup ISO hunting type things. Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to take a closer look at Kelsey's offense. From what I've watched, I feel like it is a pretty good movement system. Anywho, the team's going to rock. You guys are both wrong. Number 6, Pittsburgh. Jeff Capel. I'm going all in on Jeff Capel, a statement that would have had me tarred and feathered a couple years ago, but lo and behold, he's been pretty awesome the last 2 years, Kai. Excellent job of talent evaluation through the freshman grassroots circuit. Jalen Lowe is the clear-cut breakout candidate this year to sort of step into that alpha role in the wake of Bub Carrington's departure, who was awesome and has been since tearing up Summer League. People think he'll be a star in the actual league. Thoughts on this roster, which is, I think, a slight downgrade from last year, but to me, it's how much of a downgrade. I'm more bullish on this team. I think it's actually has a chance to be as good as last year, but some people think it's going to be a pretty big step back without some of those key veteran pieces. Blake Hinson, notably.
Yeah, is Capel fine now? I guess. I mean, talk about like changing your mind on a coach's ability. I mean, he's done well last couple of years at Pitt, if I'm being honest. And I'm surprised you have him over Miami. I'll be Matthew, number 6 in the ACC.
I am too. I am too.
I have him more down closer to 8, maybe even 9. And maybe I'm weighing them down too much. But outside of Lowe, I'm not a huge fan of this roster. I really like Jalen Lowe. I think they will miss Henson and they will miss Bub. Zach Austin is a fine player. The Diaz Graham brothers are not that good, in my opinion. They don't move the needle much for me. Damian Dunn is kind of the swing piece. Does he get back to his scoring prowess that he had at Temple? He has the Houston experience from last season, didn't play a ton, but still not going to hurt having him in the lineup after playing for such a great program. It's just kind of a meh roster outside of Lowe. and I just don't see a huge ceiling on them.
Maybe the ceiling isn't high, but I like Pitt, Matt. I have them seventh. I have Louisville sixth. So to go back to that, I'm not like tanking Louisville. But yeah, I think Lowe's going to be a star. Your on ball guy taking over. His down the stretch performances were fantastic. Leggett and Austin are nice complementary dudes. They've got a nice interior rotation. If Kante's healthy, to go with Diaz Grams and Corin, who I know they're super high on. The weird thing to me, I was like, man, replacing Hinson is going to be so tough. The floor spacing, he was really, really difficult to guard. He's the first percentile nationally in net rating. They were better on both ends of the floor with him off per Hoop Explorer. I was really surprised by some of those stats. They don't totally match my eye test, so I'm skeptical of them a bit. But they do kind of paint a picture that this team can be fine without him. Like, and they were, small sample. He didn't sit on the bench much last year, but I'm kind of buying it, Matt. Just that kind of pushed me to lean into the hype that I'm getting with this roster, where I think it just kind of fits. And the Dunn thing, yeah. Hey, you went through Houston boot camp. You're not going to suck on defense as bad as you did before that. And now he gets to kind of be a confident scorer again. I'm in. I'm buying Capel. Oh, and the Capel note, all the like collapses that they had late with all the locker room drama and injury stuff, like it all looks so much different contextualized with 2 good years after it. So yeah, I'm buying him.
The depth is horrible, right? There's nothing.
It's young. Yeah, it is young.
They have 6 guys.
I think
I think it's 7, maybe 8. They like that Delalic, the European one, and then as a depth piece. Yeah. He's not going to be like a best player. And then I think both Diaz Grams are competent.
It's a fair point. Depth is a concern, but I do think the top 7 is really good. I think Hinson's a big loss. I'm not buying the on-off stuff that Jim mentioned. Thank you, Jim. Good stat context. I think when you get a small sample size of how much he played, but I agree with you that the Damian Dunn pickup was huge. He's not Blake Hinson, but I think he's kind of an older veteran dude that can make shots. Didn't shoot it well last year, but I think he's a great replacement for that prototype. So we'll see. Feels like now we put expectations on Capel. We'll see what he actually does. Yeah. So anyway, let's move to Miami, Kai, a team that you're alluding to. I probably have too low at number 7. And to be honest, I think I do. Bart Torvik, for what it's worth, has his projections up. Has Miami 3rd at 26 overall, which seems a little bit high, but I think for where Larranaga was generally punching when he had healthy rosters, that's totally reasonable. I just don't know if this roster, Kai, has that upside, I'd say. Nigel Pack is back. Matthew Cleveland is back. A lot of dudes left. Probably a good thing. That team stunk last year. They didn't like each other. They took dumb shots. You keep 2 of those, the 2 pieces of the core, Pack and Cleveland. I guess the question is, did you like that they kept those pieces, and did you like what they added around them, of which includes 5-star freak Jaleel Balea at the off guard, Brandon Johnson from East Carolina, 14-9, Lynn Kidd, Virginia Tech, post player, an area that Larranaga really wanted to address this year, wanted to get bigger up front, want to have more of a post threat. Stat McRae from Stanford, Blackman from Stetson, scoring machine. You go through it, it's like, okay, yeah, there's more here than I initially thought.
Yeah, I have him 4th in the ACC. I think there's way more depth in Pitt, and I do think last year
that's a great point.
That the depth, the team was truly horrible. Now you mentioned it was that chemistry and the NIL stuff. That's not going away with Miami's situation. Like they pay a lot in NIL. I think Lynn Kidd was a super overpay. However, he is a pretty serviceable big man in the ACC, and him paired with Brandon Johnson, I kind of like that front court. Pretty stable floor. I think Bethea is the key. If he's good, it's one of the best backcourts in the country with Pack and with Cleveland. I do think keeping those guys was really important. And then you have Stat McRae and Blackman, 2 all-conference players at mid-major levels as your depth pieces off the bench. I think that's really important. Both of them very veteran, experienced guys as well. I still don't trust this team 100%. Like Larranaga's made those runs in the tournament, but in the regular season, he's been kind of dicey, and I feel kind of underperforming his talent in past years. But I do think there's kind of too much talent on this roster to have them, outside of the top 5 or 6 in the conference.
I am of 2 minds with Miami. I look at it and I enjoy what the roster is putting down and picking that up, what they're putting down. But then I think like the backcourt defense could be really bad. Like Nigel Pack, not a great defender. Jalen Blackman is a horrific defender coming from the ASUN where they didn't play defense. You got a freshman in Bethea who's more known as a scorer. Maybe State McRae is a shutdown guy. I think he's going to be important for them. I'm not a huge Matthew Cleveland guy. One of my theories is that their best five is going to be three guards plus Johnson and Kidd, and not consist of Matthew Cleveland. I'm curious how that hypothesis is going to age. But they do have more depth, and that's very important considering last year, part of what made them so horrible, especially down the stretch, was every guy was in and out with an injury. Like no one played every single game, basically. Even Keyshawn George missed one, but he had an ankle injury. Nigel Pack was in and out. Poplar was in and out. Cleveland was in and out. Omier missed one game with kind of banged up injury, and they didn't have depth. So anytime you took one guy out of the rotation, it got really, really messy. I think they're a little more insulated from that this year. They at least have a nice top 8 or 9, Matthew. So I have them 4th, but I can see a little downside if the defense continues to be really bad, and that's been a Larinaga bugaboo for years now.
Yeah, and he's gotten away with it. Like it's sort of like kind of how Creighton used to be, or something. You just have to be good enough defensively, right? You don't have to be great, you have to be good enough. So is this team good enough defensively? And it's like I'm with you. The more I look at this roster, the more I love the offense, the more I'm like, defensively, I don't know. Because Bethea and Swartz, I know they're freshmen. I know we're supposed to basically ignore all freshmen this season, but they are pretty unreal shot makers. Like in terms of like, if you're just going to play any team in the country on like 5 one-on-one battles, guys that can make the craziest individual shots, I think Miami might be the best just shot making team in college basketball. But the problem is that last year they did that too much. It wasn't a team. And then defensively they suffered. And that's where, on that end, is where I have questions.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
6 straight years, they have not had a defense better than 99th at Ken Palm. That's the best defense in 6 years.
Yep. That's tough. Yeah, Cleveland's sort of an oddball, right? You can play him with more length and maybe he helps your defense, but then I think it sort of gets in the way of the 3-guard, 4-out type look that made them so successful with Miller and Omier a couple of years back. I'm gonna
call
shoot,
him
right.
He's okay.
35%.
He's a solid cheater. He's a solid cheater. He is
1-3 a game. Like I don't think you close out on him. I'm not worried if he's taking threes. Also, to me, he's like, when we talk about shooters that can't shoot, I think Cleveland's like almost the defender that can't defend. Like, oh, he looks like this rangy. Oh my God, he's going to shut you down. But then I watch him. Like, is that really guarding him? I don't know.
Yeah, he's never played on a good team.
Yeah, it accurate. All right, let's go number 8. SMU. Andy Enfield hijacks this job for a whole myriad of reasons, but effectively he came in and just him and his quasi army booted Rob Lanier, who I thought did a phenomenal job last season given the circumstances. Ton of money coming to this program, Kai. Enfield doing the Enfield thing he did at USC. He's bringing a lot of transfers. Boopy Miller from Wake, Kerry Okendo from Oregon. We like him. Matty Cross, your boy, coming to ACC country, and then Johan Traore, who put up big numbers for a losing team last year at UC Santa Barbara, keeps 3 of the core from last season. SMU, Chuck Harris, the notable name there, Chuck Harris, who was pretty good last season, by the way, kind of had a little bit of a renaissance breakthrough. I don't know, Kai. There's some upside here. I had SMU initially like 5th, and then I think as the weeks gone by, I've dropped it to like 8th. I was like, 5th, that's stupid, Matt. So even at 8th, I'm like, I think I might still be too high right now, but there is depth. But just a ton of unknown, like what this team's going to look like. I don't know. Thoughts?
I think I kind of did the same thing as you. I got him 10th, and I'm still like, I might be too high still on this. I think I'm getting enamored by the shiny things in the roster. Like on paper, you see all these names flooding out, and you're like, hey, I like Matt Cross is awesome. I think he's going to be a really good player, even in the ACC. I love Boopy Miller. We already seen that he can play in the ACC. Okendo, whatever, he's a big name, former big recruit. He's been in the power ranks for a while. Chuck Harris did have a great year. I just think the combo of Boopy and Chuck Harris is a really big question mark. And pairing it with Okendo, I don't really trust Andy Enfield. Maybe he does better at a different scenery. Maybe he just wasn't a USC guy. I think he consistently underperformed his talent there, with the exception of Evan Mobley that one season. So yeah, Jim, I'm kind of cooling on this team as I go through. It's obviously a lot of talent. Will it stink defensively? Most likely. Could it be really good offensively? Yeah, it really could.
Yeah, Cross is my guy here. He's the one that I think kind of saves some other issues that I have with the roster. He's just fantastic. UMass was horrific when he left the floor last year. Clearly has straightened his head out. Now he's on his 3rd ACC program plus UMass. I think they're going to rely on him quite a bit. But Traore is a big man who doesn't shoot, rebound, pass, or protect the rim. So that is a problem for me if he's like your go-to center. Okendo struggled to get minutes in Oregon, ended up sort of getting buried behind better players there. Boopy outside of the Steve Forbes point guard manufacturing line, is he going to be quite as good? That's a question. I also don't like it next to Harris. I'm with Kai. I think that's a my turn, your turn backcourt waiting to happen. Wild card could be Yigitoglu. I've heard pretty good things about him. If he unseats Traore as the starting big man, he's one of the older freshman foreign prospects. He's played a lot of pro ball. Perhaps that helps them, but I don't like it, Matt. This is a mishmash of misfit toys to me that I'm not really a big fan of. And I started kind of low on them, lower than you guys, and I've still gotten a little bit lower. I think 11th or 12th is where I'd put them.
It's funny. The guys I like the most in this roster, honestly, like, and maybe not the best players, but like I love the Ambrose Hilton keep. I think he was an awesome defender, like a key part of why that defense was so good last year. And so you're going to play Cross and Traore, who I think could be liabilities defensively over him. Like you just have kind of an all-star team type of starting lineup. If you go Boopy, Chuck Harris, Okendo, Cross, Traore, yeah, great points, rebounds, counting stats, but like are those winning players? Do they fit? That's where I'm souring. I'm with Kai. We'll see. So
I think Cross is a good defender.
Cross can do
he is good.
Cross is
he's
great
good
player. Yeah.
In this class, I have some questions of him, but I do think he will step up. He stepped up pretty well at UMass. I think he could continue that. He's just such a hard worker, gritty guy that overachieves. Number 9, I have Clemson. Speaking of teams, I wish I would have rated higher because this coach always does better than people think. Brad Brownell off that great run last season, 6 seed, 11-9 in conference play. But did such good work in the non-conference, Kai, the outlier of the ACC. Decent roster coming back, but you lose PJ Hall, who was immense on both ends of the floor, not just offensively, but defensively, what he meant to this team. They're going to backfill with Victor Locken, Jim's boy, the Loch Ness Monster from Cincinnati. Different player, not PJ Hall, bigger, very imposing, could at least provide some resistance up front. But what do you think about this roster, Kai, that returns, I think, 3 of 5 starters, kind of a mismatch of some new plugs on the wing? It's a very Brad Brownell roster, right? Not going to scare you, but probably better than you think it is.
I think this team rocks. I think you guys are drunk for not having them in top 50. I got them 5th in the ACC. They're going to be awesome. Chase Hunter is still one of my guys. I know he wasn't most efficient player last year, but I still think he's one of the better point guards in this conference. I think Chef is a good player. I like what they brought back with Wiggins. Heidbreder, I don't love the guy, but he can shoot. So it's nice to have him off the bench. I like the pieces that Brownell brought in with Foster, Lock, and Zachary. Yeah, he overachieves. He does better with less. This team's got a lot of depth, in my opinion. They're really old, really experienced, grad transfers, seniors, juniors, everywhere you can see. I'm pretty high on this team. I fully expect them to be a tournament team once again.
Oof. I think they're kind of middling to me. What made them really hard to guard last year was the gravity of Girard. Like he could shoot from anywhere at any time, any moment. You had to be worried about where he is. And then PJ Hall stepping out, going 5 out, opening driving lanes. And I just don't think they have that this year. They're a little more conventional, harder to guard. Don't think you should guard Locken at the 3-point line. Shefflin is a little more lower volume there, and he's better on the block anyways when he's just hammering the glass. Zachary, solid, but like a little bit more redundant with Hunter than whereas Girard was, I think, complimentary. So the defense is going to be better. I think they can pressure more, something that Brownell has lost over the last 3 years. He's been a lot more conservative, played drop coverage with Hall last year. I don't know. They kind of just feel a little more conventional to me, which slots them more in the middle where Brownell has kind of gravitated to at times. I don't know what the expectations thing's hard to figure because, we've had a couple people in the Discord yelling at us about how good they're going to be. So that's gotten in my head, Kai, that there's high expectations for Clemson, but maybe that's not actually the case in the real world outside of that echo chamber. I don't know. To me, the 50th fringy, bubbly, that's where I'm going to have Clemson.
Getting Chase Hunter back was huge. I think he flirted with the draft. He was really good down the stretch last year, and I think they need like a quasi alpha in the backcourt when you lose one up front in PJ Hall to kind of until they sort of figure out how they're going to deal with those forward rotations, right? Shefflin, Locken, Reeves, even Miles Foster is kind of interesting.
Yeah, Matt,
piece.
Matt, last point. Remember how good they were when Jack Clark was healthy?
Jack Clark, who is
He's
that piece
gone.
this year? Yeah.
So
I mean, Chauncey Wiggins is a weird player. Like he's 6'10" or something, but just more of like an inverted stretch. I think he actually has real upside. People like him a lot. We'll see. It's actually it's a big team. It should be a really good defensive team again, even though I argue that they lost their two most important defensive players in PJ Hall and Jack Clark. So we'll see if that can be replenished.
yeah, that's where their bread's buttered this year. Defense.
Yep. Maybe the glass as well. Maybe they get to the offensive glass more this season. Syracuse, number 10. Talk about upside. Red Autry. Very, very enticing, Kai will say, transfer class. Kind of the same thing last year, though, too. So it's sort of a fool me once, fool me twice concern I have, but this is year two. We've talked about, I think, before how there's going to be some more concrete changes to their defensive identity. I think they're going to try and figure that out and stabilize that this season. They hired our guy, Dan Engelstad, to sort of oversee the defensive renovations. They brought in some key defensive pieces, Juan Carlos at point. And then they also bring in one of my favorite freshmen in the entire cycle, Donnie Freeman, kind of a freakish 6'9" wing guy, and your boy, Eddie Lampkin, for some bully ball up front.
Used to be.
No, he's still your boy. What, you gave up on him?
The way after the whole locker room stuff I don't think he's a good locker room guy.
Yeah. Well, if you don't like him, you got Naheem.
I gave up on Lampkin. I like it.
I'm still in on Lampkin. And then you have Naheem McLeod, who's 7'12" and presumably healthy this year. So I don't know, Kai, thoughts on Syracuse? Just the widest range of outcomes, I think, of any team in the league is what I kind of take.
Pretty wide. I have him close to where I put him ninth because whatever. The backcourt's legit awesome. I think Starling-Bell combination could be electric. Two guys that have pro potential, and then you add Carlos in the mix from Hofstra, which we'll see if he can translate to the higher level. I think he'll be serviceable and certainly be a nice third piece to that trio. I'm not totally convinced Jared Davis translates 1-to-1 in the ACC. He's an undersized forward, obviously great at Delaware, but still have my question marks. But I love that Autry is pairing with experienced transfers with real upside talent guys coming back, and like a guy like Donnie Freeman, a 5-star recruit coming in. He has a lot of good pieces to work with. I think year two under his new quote unquote system will be very helpful, and him just getting more comfortable holding the clipboard as the head coach. So yeah, I can see the upside here, Jim. I wouldn't say it's sky high. I would be surprised if this team finishes top 5, but I think they can make the tournament. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm. My first question is, will they give a crap on transition defense? Because they didn't at all last year.
Yep.
It was a complete layup line. I think gave up the highest percentage of initial shots in transition per hoop math in the entire country. It was a mess. The switch from zone didn't work at all. The other negatives, I think JJ Starling stinks. I watch him and he's just a losing player. He was 1,500th in Evan Mia's player rankings, first percentile nationally in net rating last year. Every stat was this guy's awful, and it matched my eye test. So I don't know. He's gonna have to get a lot better. The upside guys like Westry and Freeman, I'm obviously a little less familiar just because we haven't seen them out on a college court much. Those guys could swing things upwards. Lampkin is at least steady in the paint, a nice finisher, and Carlos is an adult. I think he's going to get back on defense, unlike a lot of those guys last year. So that was a nice add. He's a good passer, somebody that's trying to make others better, where I think a lot of Syracuse's roster last year was just kind of trying to get their own. And Bell's a great spacer. So Matt, I split on them a little bit too. I have them right dead set in the middle, have them 10th in the ACC, just sneaking ahead of SMU. But I have questions. I have questions about Autry and how kind of sloppy they looked at times last year.
Are you encouraged by Starling's improvement, Jim, from Notre Dame? He was categorically better last year than freshman year.
I don't think he was remotely a winning player last year. He was a little more efficient.
Way more improved.
Sure. He's going to have to improve at the same astronomical rate to continue to become a winning player.
Fair enough.
Yeah, Kai, I'm with you. Stubbornly still a fan of Starling just because I loved him so much coming out of high school. But I actually was a little bit not underwhelmed with him last year. He put up good numbers. It just wasn't. Yeah, the eye test. This was a very clear eye test thing for me. Just didn't take great shots. Just a very my turn, your turn. And again, that might have been a year one under red thing. So maybe it looks more cohesive and maybe Starling benefits. You can argue Carlos
with a passer, which helps.
Yeah, right. A truer point guard in Carlos versus Mintz that was sort of just an alpha's alpha and scored and passed. But I think really Carlos is more of a set the table guy, gets his guys the ball in better spots type thing. So we'll see there.
I'll add one more
Uh,
piece of context in
yeah.
Starling's favor. The off numbers last year, 300 possessions. Syracuse shot 41% from three, and their opponents shot 25% when he was off the court. So that is a completely
Hmm.
ridiculous, unsustainable split. Probably is coloring him poorly in Evan Mia's rankings and any of the on-off stuff. So that grain of salt, perhaps he's better than those give him credit for.
Let's go to number 11. These next two teams are going to be good discussions, Notre Dame and Georgia Tech. I think 11 and 12, sort of the upstart, lots of big headroom, lots of headroom for improvement, anticipation for year two of two very good coaches. Let's start with the Irish, Kai. Ton of buzz lately in the recruiting momentum coming off a very impressive, I think, plucky conference performance. It's funny. This team still finished 7-13. Like it was objectively a bottom five team in the ACC last year. It didn't feel like that because they played much more competitively late, and they got all the young wait for the future type of caveat. Give them a pass. Awesome defensively. We know what this team can be on offense once these freshmen to sophomores, take more efficient shots, make more efficient shots, get more acclimated with the offense. Um, I don't know. The question for our name, Kai, is how good can they really be, right? Like
Yeah.
they're going to be way better. Can they be way better, or just like is the natural improvement trajectory still not good enough to be a tournament team this year? That's where I'm sort of torn.
Yeah, that's where it kind of wrote me back in because I do love Shrewsbury and I love this team. But yeah, and by the way, yeah, you said 7-13 last year in the ACC. I'd probably argue they won 5 more games they should have, and then going into the year.
That's true.
From a preseason perspective, I think they had like basically top or bottom 5 continuity and experience last year in the country in the ACC, and still won 7 games. I mean, Shrewsbury's incredible, great coach, and the sophomore backcourt, Burton and his son Braden Shrewsbury, fantastic, lots of potential there. I do like that he brought back a ton, period, on his roster. A lot of continuity. I mean, continuity is king right now in the transfer portal era, and the fact that all these guys got that experience last season in Shrewsbury's system coming back, I think is powerful. Matt Alaco is a smart ad from Princeton, solid all-around player. So there is a lot to like on this team. I agree, though. It was a team that rated outside of top 100 in KenPom. Are they jumping 50 spots? Are they jumping 70 spots? Are they jumping 25 spots? I think it's tough to gauge the jump. The jump is coming. How far? Not too sure. I have them right around 10th, 11th in the ACC as well.
I'm like 8th and 9th. I'm really high on Notre Dame. I think they jump like 60 spots. I think adding Olaco adds an adult in the room to a very, very young team last year. I remember coming into last year, it was like, this is the worst power conference roster we've ever seen. They ended up finishing like 50 spots ahead of where they were projected in KenPom, despite cratering down to 226th at one point. They really, really surged late. I think the defense is going to be fantastic. Shrewsbury is smart about keeping teams in the half court. They're kind of tough to run on. They were great defensively last year, playing pretty conservative drop coverage type style. I think it works, Matt. I think what they brought back, the amount they brought back, the coach they have on the sideline, the momentum that they're starting to build. I'm a big fan. Olaco reminds me of Langborg going to Northwestern. Just like, okay, steadying influence to go with a well recruited roster, and obviously that roster had Boo Buie, and Marcus Burton is not Boo Buie, but I think they're going to be in the at-large discussion.
Okay, yeah, I think it's a fringe at-large team. And I think it comes down to probably 2 or 3 games whether or not they actually get over the hump. And with Shrewsbury as sort of a great in-game tactician, you sort of like you would think they'd be on the right side of those this year, especially with a not old backcourt, still 2 sophomores, but a non-freshman backcourt, which means a ton. Yeah, the Burton thing's crazy. Like he was awesome last year, but man, just a ton of hype around him this season and a ton on his shoulders. I know he could be awesome making that leap to year 2. I love Burton, but he will need some help. I think this team's best if they get a lot from Roper, and Shrewsbury really expands his game. Alaco, Jim, to your point, why he's so valuable, I think he just provides a little bit of a helper there in the backcourt. Yeah, Irish are going to be good. How good's the question? Let's move along to team number 12, Georgia Tech. The sophomore stud duo of Nathan George and Bane Ndongo are back, and that's sort of what sets the table for, I think, any hype with this team this year. They also picked up Jaden McCollum from Oklahoma, kind of a sneaky, awesome pickup, frankly. Shot-making guard, veteran, proven on winning team from good coach. They got Luke O'Brien, who Damon Stoudemire also touted as like just an older winning Swiss Army knife type guy. I know he's not like a world beater, but again, back to that Matalako comparison, a winning player. Maybe Lance Terry comes back healthy and is good. I think a guy who actually matters. We've liked him his whole career. Kai, thoughts on the Fighting Damon Stoudemire? Do they make that similar quantum leap that we all think that the Shrewsburys are going to make?
I think they could. We love Damon Stoudemire. What he did at Pacific was truly impressive. I still think he's a really good coach. And yeah, the George and Dongo sophomore duo, is one of the best sophomore duos in the country, I think. I also like the McCollum ad. I think he's really, really good. So having those three guys, great place to start. I'm still not a Kawasi Reeves fan, but if he's going to be your fourth, fifth guy in your starting lineup, fine. Do they lack depth still? I think a little bit. Unless Lance Terry comes back full strength, and that would definitely help. But past that, it's freshmen. It's a Sac State transfer in Duncan Powell, who's fine. Ryan Mutombo is not a Division I player. No offense to Ryan Mutombo, but he just isn't. I don't think he even gets on the floor. But I like Stoudemire. I like the upside guys. I have him right around 12-13 in the ACC, same as you, Matt.
I have him 15th. I'm not a big fan of Georgia Tech. I think for them to outperform where I've got him, I think Mustaf and Sutton, the freshmen, have to be solid contributors. George and Dongo are good, but I think they each kind of have some limitations. Dongo isn't a shooter or a passer. He was like 28-74 assist to turnover ratio last year. Not a great shot blocker. The numbers when he was the primary big man were bad at the rim, giving up almost 60%. O'Brien's just kind of steady. McCollum's an odd fit with George because I think McCollum's best with the ball in his hands. And that's also George's game. He's kind of like the point guard consummate distributor. So making that work is weird. And yeah, the bench is very, very thin unless those freshmen are good. Because I am not a Duncan Powell guy. And as Kai said, Ryan Mutombo, not a Division I player. So Matt, I still think they're a year away. You get junior George, junior Ndongo. Maybe those rising sophomores are good. You fill in the blanks with slightly better veterans, better fits. I think 25-26 is when Stoudemire really takes his step forward.
Yeah, I think that's the same, again, parallel with Notre Dame. Is it this year or is it next year, right? Are we a year ahead of the hype this year, or are we too calm with our hype this year? Same story. I like Stout. Man, this team really there are some holes, though, in this team. I think they actually feel like there's a higher floor for Notre Dame, a lower floor for Tech, just with some of the makeup of their roster. But
on Bartorvik, Georgia Tech 96th. Evan Mia just released his rankings, Georgia Tech 93rd. That's kind of where I have them. I don't know.
Yeah, but below that's like 20, 30 spots below Notre Dame, I think, in both those as well, too. So just for context, I think the numbers sort of believe Notre Dame's a better team. I think that's reasonable. All right, the last three teams here in Tier 3, Cal, NC State, Virginia Tech. Just off the top, thoughts on that ordering, Kai?
I had NC State 12 above Georgia Tech.
Okay.
So, and I don't like NC State. We can just talk about them if you want.
Let's do them first. Yeah, Jim, because I think that's sort of like the obviously toast of the ACC town last season with the run to the Final Four. DJ Bernsey is no longer there. They return Jane Taylor. They return Michael O'Connell, who was kind of good in spite of our skepticism down the stretch last season. Dennis Parker, Ben Middlebrooks, the other kind of fringe guys who are back. Middlebrooks I actually quite like. I think he's a very underrated player.
Nice player.
Picked up 2 Louisville transfers. A Bowling Green transfer, Marcus Hill, averaged 21 a game. Very good scorer. I just don't know if he can score efficiently here. And then Dontrez Styles from Georgetown. Georgetown lost a lot last year. Jim, I don't like this roster. Why am I too low at 14? No. I just don't like the roster at all. I don't. I'm sorry.
I think you're fine. I like to applaud the general public for not overhyping team off miracle Final Four run. I don't know if they're learning their lesson, but there's not really NC State's going to be top 25 good this year. People are, I guess, seeing what they lost and taking that into account. Yeah, it's an odd batch of additions where I think Keats is really going to have to work some of that late season magic, making it all work together. But the reason they were good last year was they played DJ Burns like 35 minutes a game at the end of the season, and he was completely unstoppable. And they just don't have that kind of unique piece this year. I think even Louisville fans say Huntley Hatfield was like one of the actual bright spots on the team. So I'm not going to just rip him down for being a Louisville guy. But it feels kind of underwhelming to me, Kai. Just overall, the guards they brought back are the ones that were a little pedestrian. Taylor sort of got phased out as a key piece late in the year. Maybe Parker's upside is going to unlock some stuff. They're kind of lower end to me. 13th, 14th, where Matt has them is fair to me.
Yeah, last year's luck box is over. It's really worth remembering Keats was almost fired. He would have gotten fired last year had he not made the tournament, and he wasn't
Michael
going
O'Connell
to.
doesn't make that heave. He's fired.
He's never been a top 40 team in KenPom. Never at NC State. They were 76 entering the ACC tournament last year. It wasn't that great of a team. They were fine. They were 10th in the ACC. So, yeah, I think you're fine having them there. I did have them a little bit better. I think the floor is kind of there. The front court is solid, not great. The back court is uninspiring. It's a little bit boring in my opinion. The transfers is the key. I don't think I'm a big James guy. I'm not a Styles guy. Hill could be really good. He was a big scorer in, I think, JUCO before Bowling Green. Like, he could be like an electric scorer, even at the ACC level. And Huntley outfield, fine. Still an underwhelming group. I don't know if Keats found something, discovered it, or just lucked into last year. I think kind of leaned the latter. I think they finish not out of the top 100, but right inside of it.
If they finish where they were before the ACC tournament, 76, that seems reasonable, right?
Fair. Yes.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just to put a bow, I didn't love how excited Keats was to get the two Louisville transfers, who he was super impressed by when they played them. I think because Louisville almost beat them, I think, in the ACC tournament. And so that was sort of the evaluation premise for why you picked up whatever. I think Huntfield's going to be pretty good. I think he's sort of the exception to the Louisville stink rule. Maybe Tyler Johnson's in
Huntfield.
that. Yeah.
I like that. Portmanteau his names. Instead of Huntley Hatfield, just make him
Huntfield. Yeah, just Huntfield. That's easier for me.
That's good.
All right, let's talk Cal real quick in Virginia Tech. I know we're going to run along here, but God, this league never ends.
It's okay.
Mark Madsen, intrigue year 2, complete roster reset. This team was kind of good last year when it had all its pieces, which was very rare and took a while to actually get all the pieces in tow. But there was like, okay, this team looked like a fringe tournament team at times, just nowhere near consistent enough. And now you reset the entire roster. And I'll just start with this, Jim. Is this roster better or worse than last year?
Damn it, I was going to ask you the exact same question.
I think
you really took that
out
of my mouth.
It's worse. It's not worse.
I think so too. And last year finished 121st in KenPom, so I'm concerned. Now I love Petritis. I think he is a monster, both ends of the ball, does pretty much everything on the court. But there's questions elsewhere. I mean, Michigan State fans couldn't wait to get Sissoko out of town, and the backcourt Blackshears did not look the same after his knee injury last year. Maybe the second season is what does it for him. Stojakovic, great upside piece. I have no qualms with that. But then it's just kind of mid-major, not even good mid-major teams after that. Kai, I'm having a hard time getting super pumped about this, even with Madsen on the sideline, who I think elevates teams. I'm with Matt. I think it's a worse roster than last year, and they finished 121st. So they're like around 100th for me.
A team I definitely got carried away with last year and a little bit this year at the start, but have moved them back down to 14, 15 in the ACC. Yeah, it's like a junior version of what Louisville's done in the portal. You bring in a brand new team, but it's just kind of slightly less at every single position. BJ Omat's getting a lot of attention all of a sudden. He was great at North Dakota. He has the length and like athletic ability. I do not think he is an ACC player. And if you're relying on him, he is good. He's not
very good.
An ACC player right now.
Wait,
like
you say Omat?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he shot 41% in the Summit against their defenses.
Yeah. I mean, he's got the tool. He's long as heck, and he looks like he should be an impactful guy on both ends. North Dakota was much improved last year, but I still think let's pump the brakes. I've seen him like draft pick. Let's just pump the brakes a little bit on the hype for some of these guys. It's a good roster. It's not great in the ACC.
Jalen Tyson was awesome, like awesome. And I think, again, another guy that you've seen just sort of parlay that momentum in the NBA Summer League stuff where, he's like creating off of pick and rolls. You can post him up. I just think that's such a big loss, and there's no one remotely close to his level of talent. And then just the point guard, like Christian Tucker from UTSA is going to play a lot of point because, Javon Blackshear may not be fully healthy. Like, is he going to be healthy the whole year? I'd probably bet against that, which means a lot of Christian Tucker minutes at point, and UTSA was bad. I don't know. Okay. I might be convinced.
Christian Tucker's a former walk-on at UTSA too. Like, that tells you what his pedigree. I don't know if he elevates like this.
So in that light, Jim, why do I have Virginia Tech below Cal in my rankings? And I'm now questioning myself. Kyle, go to you with the Hokies. Their best player is now Heiser Miller from Temple,
That's why.
who who was who was maybe potentially not trying to win games last year at Temple. They do have Toby Lawal, who we all love, right? Just to human highlight reel from VCU. Should help the rim protection. Ben Burnham, Charleston, Jaden Shutt off the Duke remnant transfer, castaway bench. Lost a lot though, man. This is, I think, Mike Young's like weakest roster, and I think as good as a coach he is, I think there's some. It's a brittle team. It's a brittle team
by a mile. I think the roster sucks. Like I put him 14th, but I could have him 15th. The roster's really bad. They weren't a good team last year with a good roster, and that worries me. Like, yeah, Miller, underwhelming. I love Toby Lawal, but come on, he still only played like 18 minutes a game last year. Something kept him off the floor at VCU. I don't know if you can rely on him to be like a super impactful player. Yeah, and everything else is underwhelming. There's not like I literally do not like this team at all, Jim. I can't say like one nice thing about it on the
Hi,
roster.
do you think
Besides
they're
Mike Young is a
more?
good coach? What?
Do you think they're better suited for tier 4? And tier 4, I'm defining by zero chance to make the tournament. Tier 3 is like maybe in a crazy world you could see them making the tournament.
I mean, yeah, I do have them like right next to Stanford, but I also have that right next to Cal. Like these teams are interchangeable for me, basically at this point. I don't think Stanford is a tier below Virginia Tech. To answer your question that way,
I think I agree with that too. Yeah,
yeah, I'm gonna agree hard on that. We'll talk Stanford in a second, but Virginia Tech, they just don't feel like a Mike Young team. There's not the guys run. I mean, Shoot, I guess, can be the one running off screens and kind of weaving through that tangled web of off-ball motion. That's what he's most known for, the sets type stuff. But I don't know. Heiser Miller was at least good once the investigation happened and they went to the final of the American or the semis. I think they won a bunch of games in a row, and it's like, oh, this is what you're capable of. Okay, interesting. When you're locked in all 40 minutes. I think Jaden Young actually has some pretty high upside. And Kai Poteet, I remember you went to bat for him last preseason.
Solid.
He's a pretty good, like per minute productive guy. Now he's going to play 25 minutes with Lynn Kidd gone. I think he's going to be rock solid there. I think Young will keep the floor high enough, Matt, where they're about 80th to me. I have them 14th in the ACC. They'll beat a couple teams in Castle when the crowd gets hyped, but I think generally it's going to be a down year for them, and then there's questions about whether Young's the guy there.
I think he is. I think it's just a tough place to win. Maybe that's a dumb, antiquated thought, but we'll see. He has not gotten big time talent. Obviously, I think Buzz had a better crop of talent across the board, but Buzz is a good coach, so maybe not fair to compare them. Let's go to tier 4. Stanford, Florida State, Boston College. Let's start with Stanford, who I think is the team with the most excitement and upside and optimism because they have a great coach and it's a new dawn and a new day for a team that we were sort of like, when will they finally turn the page here? But it's certainly a tough roster, Kai. It's more of a Pac-12 type roster, I'll call it, than an ACC high-end type roster. Darren Saran, Jalen Blakes from Duke, Sellers from USC, and Okpara from Harvard. But the star is Max Reynaud, who is like, maybe a pro-level player. That's sort of the epicenter of this team. I don't know. I just think this team is very, very much a work in progress from start to finish. I don't really see a ton of upside, even with some of these young or with Reynaud and liking some of the transfers. I just think this is a bottom 4 team pretty easily.
Yeah, I think wherever, I assume they'll be rated pretty low in the computers. I think wherever they're rated, they're going to overachieve because I think Kyle Smith is that good, and I think he will have this team playing well. The front court is awesome. Reynaud and Okpara is a great combination. Like those two guys are legit, and I think our two combined form one of the better front courts in the conference. But the backcourt's weak. It's not an ACC backcourt. No offense to Jalen Blakes. I know you played in the ACC, but let's be real.
That's pretty funny.
It's not an ACC backcourt. And yeah, the depth is really questionable. If we're going to question the team's depth, we have to question Stanford's. It's unproven. It's not made up of 5-star talent from the freshman class. It's kind of like, wow, we lack compared to what other teams have in this conference, Jim. So I think they're clear bottom 3 for me. But again, close to Virginia Tech and Cal. It's not like a cascading fall down from them.
Yeah, I'm going to propose a Stanford versus Georgia Tech board bet. I will take Stanford. Are either of you in?
Nope, can't get that.
Matt, you have them a tier below. You have to take that.
Wait, sorry, you're saying Stanford? Sorry. Yes, I definitely take that. I thought you were saying
Okay.
Georgia Tech better than Stanford. No, I agree with, except
Yeah,
you're going
take
to lose
Stanford.
that.
Okay, cool. Let's do it. I
You'll
think
lose it.
Darren Sarin is really good for
I love
Irvine.
Saren. I agree with Jim.
He
I love
was
Saren. Very good
limited
player.
last year because they had like a bunch of fourth year seniors and the team was amazing. They weren't going to like completely hand over the keys to a freshman, but I think he's going to be really, really good for them. Turkish sophomore from Irvine. Blake's and Sellers. I think Sellers is actually pretty solid too. Great pedigree. Just kind of got buried with some of the young prospects that Enfield was trying to get out there. He's better than Bronny James last year. Look up any statistic. I think there's enough in like the top 5, 6, 7 if Agarwal's helpful. I'm intrigued by Kastner, the lacrosse player. Remember how good Pat Spencer was at Northwestern after
Yep.
he played
Yep.
lacrosse? Maybe it's not fair to project that on him, but perhaps he's something. But yeah, the depth is my fear. The depth is nightmarish, and if they lose one of their top 4 guys to an injury, they're gonna tank hard. So that's the risk here. But I think they're gonna be competent, Matt. I have them 12th. Wait, I think 12th in the
Man.
ACC.
Oof. Yeah, that's too far for me. Yeah.
Yep.
I don't think they're playing
I'm
any
gonna-
defense, Jim. I don't think this team's guarding. Although it's funny, I'm putting them with Georgia Tech, and Georgia Tech, you could certainly argue the defense is a major question mark too. So,
I think
yeah,
Sellers is okay and Blake's is a good shutdown defender, but
Blake's is bulldoggy. Yeah, fair.
and they got Kyle Smith. He plays a lot of two bigs. They're huge, and he talked about that a ton in Blue Ribbon. He's like, we are massive, and that matters on defense.
Mhm.
And now I just wish their bigs weren't all freshmen outside of Reno. All right, last two. Let's do a quick here. Florida State, Boston College. Florida State, I had a slight hair above Boston College. I'm not going to passionately debate you if you'd like to do that. They have the best JUCO player in the country, in Malik Ewan, 6'11" freak from South Plains. They bring back Jameer Watkins, who is the super duper freak. Cannot believe he stayed. He might be one of the best players. I mean, I think he's just an awesome player all the way through. He popped early last year. He was consistently awesome. Had no help. Dysfunctional team. This team was not horrible last year. That was sort of the thing that I had to pinch myself. Like, this team was better than I thought. It was still bad, but it was not a terrible basketball team. 17-16, 10-10 in the league, 79th overall. I think it's important to remember because this was not the Florida State of 2023. It was actually like at least a semi-competitive basketball team, even though it's nowhere near the old Leonard Hamilton standards of before.
I just think Hamilton's done, which is a shame. I love Hamilton, but he's done. 105, 205, 79 is your Ken Pom run the last 3 years. It doesn't seem like he's like it's. I don't want to say it's more a lazy roster build now, Jim, for Hamilton. I feel like when he was good, he was getting just solid player after solid player, home run. It made sense. I just feel like he's kind of looking at size now and just saying, that guy's big, and not looking at the actual tape. Because the guys he's brought in just have not been that good. He's not getting top-tier talent now. He did bring in the JUCO guy. Maybe he's really good. But again, he's a big guy who blocks shots. He's not like an impactful scorer. He's not going to be... I don't think he's going to be a dominant player in the ACC. I do love Watkins, but there's not enough there. And the transfers... I know exactly who Boston Holt is and Jerry Dang. Again, not ACC guys, in my opinion.
Yeah, so clearly limited by NIL. It's almost like he brought in this class to be like, look how bad my NIL is, administration. These are the transfers I had to bring in. I am concerned about that group. I believe Ewan was at Ole Miss before and was like a complete zero, like a total zero just 1 year ago. So I'm not jumping all over him after 1 year in junior college. Those guys typically take a year to be awesome at this level. The first year is always kind of shaky. So it's like Watkins and what else? Guard play is really, really frightening. I don't think there's the switch everything destroyer defenders that they typically have. There's only a couple that I like in that regard, maybe Chandler Jackson and Watkins, of course. So can the size be good enough defensively I think the offense is going to be like terrible. So that's my concern, Matt. They're down in a tier of their own not a tier of their own, but them in Boston College they're the ones that kicked down the well. I didn't put Stanford with them like you did.
Yeah. Speaking of Boston College, let's just go there real quick to close this up. One player of note returns, Donald Hand, who honestly wasn't really that good last year, but I know he has decent pedigree and I think is actually going to be good-ish.
He started at Siena, right? Or is Georgetown?
I thought Hand was a homegrown guy that was like a fringe 4-star dude that was hurt. I don't know. I feel like Boston College has had some decent recruits that like have kind of not quite taken off. Injuries have really been a problem there, and injuries when you're at this part of the totem pole really really hurt. Um, yeah, 4 mid-major transfers, Shim, couple of 3 stars off the bench. It looks like a Boston College roster. And unfortunately, in the ACC, everyone's getting a little bit better. And so you're sort of in last place. And that's kind of the long and short of it.
Yeah, 5 of their top 6 guys had eligibility left and departed via the portal. That's brutal. Quentin Post was the only one that graduated. He was the star that kind of made them go last year. I'm not sure what this team's identity is. Deion Brown was playing at the hyper fast UMBC pace last year, so his stats are hyper inflated. Do not buy those per game stats at all. I liked Beadle in the rare minutes I saw at Clemson. I saw like a hesitation baseline, like fake that really wowed me. Maybe he's going to actually be a productive point guard, kind of the Jaden Zachary trade that Clemson and Boston College made there. But up front, man, you're just trying to find like undervalued pieces. McFarland, the 6'5" power forward. Maybe we can make him work in the ACC. Chad Venning, the kind of ground bound, ground bound. That's probably unfair, but bringing him in from the A10, it's not an exciting group, Kai. It's clearly the least talented roster in the conference to me when you factor in that Florida State has Watkins. So I can't put them anywhere besides 18th. Maybe somebody implodes and finishes below them, but I think they are a lock for bottom 2.
Yeah, I mean, I just bumped them down again, just looking at the roster. I was like, I had them last. I'm like, I don't see the upside whatsoever. Your transfers are Southeastern Louisiana, UMBC, St. Bonaventure, former Morgan State. Benning was at Morgan State before Bonaventure. He's a solid player, but again, we're talking about these guys. We don't mean they're bad. Like Jerry Dang is not bad. BJ Omat's not bad. Chad Venning's not bad. But in the ACC, we're talking competitiveness in one of the best conferences in America. You have to have something better than that to finish outside the bottom 5 or so. And BC is just in that situation, Matt, where they can't attract big name talent with the NIL situation that they have. So yeah, it's a last place team for me. I mean, Grant had their best season in a long time last year, and they're still 71st and still 8-12 in the league. So I just don't see the upside this season.
Yeah, Quentin Post would be on the Mount Rushmore of like Boston College players, right? Is that too far? I mean, he was like awesome player.
I mean,
all the way awesome. You go back to the Al Skinner. Smith, I know. Jared Dudley. You go back. There's some really good players go back to the Al Skinner era. But like in the last 10, 15 years, he might be like one of their best players. I know Christian had those 2 awesome guards, Kyrie Boy Bowman, and then
Jerome Robinson.
Thank you. But God, I think Post is probably better than both of them. Like just as what he meant defensively, offensively, did everything. And then you don't really backfill with much of any, super high upside talent. So yeah, it's the worst team in the league. Sorry, BC, we love you, but just not this year.
Grant finished 170th in his second year in 2023. And that's not outside the realm of possibility for this team.
No, not at all.
I mean, I think it's pretty impressive that they got to 20-16 last year. Like that was a breakthrough year last year for this team, right? So there's just has to be a natural cycle step back when you're a team like Boston College. You're one of these kind of lower end of the power conference totem pole operations. Number of teams making the tournament this year. Ooh. How many of the large swath of 18, Kai, do you see punching their ticket? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 last season, 5 out of 15. So a third of the league got in last year.
8.
Yeah.
I set it at 8.
I'm going 9. The more the firmer middle, Matt, will get to 9. A couple teams will beat Duke, get that big top of the resume win. North Carolina's a little more vulnerable than they were last year. I'll say 9.
I agree. I'm going to go with 9. I think the league is going to, yeah, I agree.
All right, good.
Yeah, sorry, nothing profound. I think 9 teams seems right.
Kai, do we have reviews?
No reviews. Good podcast.
All right.
Good podcast. Good ACC. We're back at the same time next week doing another cool conference yet to be named?
Probably Big 12.
Probably Big 12. Big 12. Come back and join us. Until that time, thank you. We are in the heat of off-season prep, less than a month to go. Get ready. Thank you for joining us. College basketball.